Tameside is part of a borough consisting of little towns. It's 4 miles east from Manchester, created in 1974 by the government. Tameside has been through the most horrific evil acts, in which 3 prolific serial killers, who would be remembered by all in Tameside.
I was the last person ever to see her alive.
Our first killers are the Moors murderers. They were a couple, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, who murdered 5 innocent children, in which they tortured and sexually assaulted. The killings happened in 1960s Manchester. Every one of these children was lured with the friendly face they associated with trust. The first victim was 16-year-old Pauline Reed. Hindley lured her into a car in which they sexually assaulted her and then slit her throat on the 12th of July 1963.
What was Pauline's personality like?
Pauline was timid, very, very timid, very, very shy person. So I can't ever see her getting in anybody's car that she didn't know. And we knew Myra Hindley from being little. And Pauline was the very first one that she murdered.
What was your relationship with Pauline?
We all grew up together. We were best friends. Played together in the streets. Just mates, not actually related.
Do you remember when you last saw her?
Yes, it was the night she went missing. I was the last person ever to see her alive.
Could you tell us about the events that occurred?
Yeah, I should have gone with her to a dance, but my dad wouldn't let me, so a friend and I said we'll just see whether Pauline will go to the dance on her own. So we followed her so far, and as we cut off down this side street, Pauline carried on walking, and we should have sort of met together at the top, but unfortunately we didn't. And that was the last time we saw her. Brady and Hindley had picked her up that time. We didn't know at the time, but that's when Brady and Hindley picked her up.
Do you remember the day you found out that she'd gone missing?
Yes, that was the morning after. I was working on the Saturday morning, and as I was coming home from work, Pauline's mum met me and asked her to see Pauline. So I said I hadn't seen her since the night before, so she said she hadn't been out all night. So all that afternoon we went looking for her. Me and her mum went looking for her and couldn't find her.
How much of a shock was it when you found the body?
Devastated.
Was it just you that went to find her, or was it other people that... Did you go searching?
No, I didn't go searching. It was 25 years later that they actually found her body. It wasn't when they found Leslie Ann or any of the others. 25 years later they found her, when he admitted to doing the murders.
The second victim was 12-year-old John Kilbride. Hindley offered him a lift home from Ashton-under-Lyne Market, in which he was there regularly, earning pocket money. They sexually assaulted and strangled him on the 23rd of November 1963. Keith Bennett, aged just 12 years old, was on his way to his grandmother's when he was lured into the car of Brady and Hindley, where they took him to the moors. We are unsure where Keith Bennett is buried or what happened to him. Ten-year-old Leslie Ann Downey was taken from a fairground, and she was taken back to their house in Hattersley, where they sexually assaulted her and killed her. They took her body to Saddleworth Moor. On the 26th of December 1964, Leslie Ann Downey took her last breath, in which she begged for her mother. The final victim was Edward Evans, a 17-year-old apprentice engineer who was lured back to the couple's house and killed and strangled in front of Hindley's brother-in-law, who called the police. Evans was found wrapped in a sheet in their house. Ian Brady, born 1938, lived a life of crime. He ended up in foster care because his mother neglected him, and not long after, he ended up back with his mother. Brady got a job as a store clerk, in which he later met his future girlfriend, Myra Hindley. After being found out, Brady was sentenced to concurrent life terms and died on the 15th of May 2017.
I didn't know Brady. We only ever seen him with the scarf wrapped around his face, coming down the street, going into her grandma's house on his motorbike. But I never actually saw his face.
Myra was a different case. She was born in 1942, in which she was raised in a working class background. She moved out to live with her grandmother. Just 18, she worked as a secretary for a small company called Millward's Merchandise. After being connected to the murders, she was sentenced to life, and she died aged 60 from a heart attack.
When did you first meet Myra?
Oh gosh, I was only a little girl. She lived in the next street to us.
All these victims still had lives to live, but the two evil killers had taken this from them at such a young age. The community was shook by these events which had occurred, but they came together to help find the bodies and help all the families.
Doctor, was a serial killer.
The next killer was Dr. Harold Shipman, born on the 14th of January 1946. 2 months after starting his new job, he had already killed his first victim with an overdose of medicine that he'd injected into them. Aged 31, he moved to Donnybrook Practice in Hyde after people found out he was a drug addict. On the 31st of January 2000, Shipman was convicted for 15 murders, but was found to have killed 223 people over his time as a doctor. He died January 13th, 2004. He was found hanging in his prison cell.
What was Harold Shipman like with you personally?
He was a really, really nice doctor. Couldn't do enough for you. Really nice, did home visits. There was no issues with him doing home visits. I know when my daughter was ill one morning and he was coming home from a fishing trip. And on the way back from the fishing trip, he came to see my daughter to make sure it was okay. A really nice doctor at the time, and that was obviously before we knew everything that had gone on.
Did you go to him while he had his own practice, or was it while he was still at Donnybrook Surgery?
No, it was while he had his own practice, and at that time as well, there was about 3,000 patients on the list, and there was a big waiting list as well. So we felt it was really lucky that I managed to become one of his patients.
Did you know about his history in Halifax, where he'd had a drug addiction?
Not at all. I think if I'd known that at the time, I probably wouldn't have registered with him as a patient. Things like that aren't, I suppose, given to the normal general public, and I think that would have been a factor of me not registering with him if I'd known about his history.
But how did you feel when you found out when he was convicted of the murders?
Absolutely devastated. Couldn't believe it at the beginning. I remember going to his surgery, and I was pregnant with my second daughter at that stage, and me actually saying to him, I'm really, really sorry about what's gone on, and him looking at me in the eye and saying, I've not done anything, I haven't done it. Whatever they're saying, I haven't done it. And to somebody to look you in the eye and say that, you feel believable at the time. And when I went into the surgery, there was flowers everywhere. There was cards from his patients who couldn't believe that he was being accused of what he'd been accused of all those murders. And so it was a very, very unbelievable time for me.
Do you think it shocked you more with the amount of killings he'd actually done, so the 223 people that were inquested into the killings he'd committed?
It was a massive shock. When they first told us about the first one, which I think was Mrs. Grundy, and the obviously issues with the writing of the will, and then it started looking into them, you thought it might have been like just one or two, and then they were exhuming bodies from Hyde Cemetery all the time, and you feel like, oh no, it's another one, and then to get to the number that they got to was just unbelievable. So and it was a long time for me to believe that he'd actually done it, even after he'd been arrested, and And even after he'd been found guilty, it took me a good year, a couple of years to really understand what he'd done and the impact of what he'd done, and that my doctor, was a serial killer.
Our earliest serial killer, known to most people, is Dale Cregan. Cregan was a drug-fueled killer. Cregan had a family feud with the Short family. This is where his killings started, with the murder of Mark Short. He shot him in a Manchester pub called the Cotton Tree Inn. He then went on to shoot Mark's father. Cregan then ended up going on the run for 5 weeks. He killed 2 policewomen at Abbey Gardens in Hattersley on the 28th of September 2012. Cregan is spending his life rotting in prison after being convicted of the murders of all 4 people.